So you've spent a good portion of your life dedicated towards guiding others in financial success. What got you into the financial industry to begin with?
Ego. I was, at the time, 18, and I had started a company prior to this that was kind of silly, but I was delivering salt, like big 50-pound bags of salt. And I had figured out two ways to do that. One was in all the retirement communities, I would charge a premium on every bag of salt that cost like $1.50, $1.75 if you buy them by the pallet. And I could deliver them to retirement communities where people had a hard time lifting 50-pound bags of salt for water softeners, which is a big deal. I lived in Las Vegas at the time. And then the second set of customers were shipments by the pallet to casinos, car washes, like one that your listeners would have heard of that was a client of mine was like Harley Davidson Cafe on the Las Vegas Strip. Well, so I had made an agreement with this wholesale salt company when I was 18, and they were called, well, I guess probably shouldn't mention their name given what the rest of the story is going to be like, but they would bring the salt in from Salt Lake. And I was going to town. I had bought a pickup truck for the deliveries I would make myself. I was figured out how to drop ship and just invoice all these other customers. And I remember like opening up Word and being like, I hope there's a template for invoicing because I just sold like 3 people. I don't even know how to bill them yet. I'm probably breaking every law in terms of how I paid myself, etc. And then that company that brought the salt in changed local managers. And they said, where are all these sales coming from? Because they were the only new sales that had happened in a while. And they said, there's this kid who's figured out this thing. So what they did, because they had the fax and contact information because they were drop shipping, and overnight I went out of business because they went to my customers. And I only found out about this because one of the car washes, I called them and I said, I think you're ready for another order. And they said, oh yeah, we do need to order again. But I thought you should know about this competitor. They're selling salt for 25 cents less than you. And you mentioned that your supplier just raised your prices, so you might want to know about this. And I said, could you send that over to me? She faxed it over, and it was my supplier. And I was out of business overnight. And it would just seem so unfair. I even went so far as like, what if I brought a semi-tractor load myself from Salt Lake on a regular basis? And what would that cost? And carrying costs, it was untenable for an 18-year-old. And so I was out of business overnight. But there was an internship I'd heard about through a friend of the family with Northwestern Mutual. And they said, we're going to teach you all about the financial business, etc. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know beans from apple butter about finance at that time. The only thing I had known, and this is a little bit of a silly story, I so appreciate both you and the listeners who have served in the military. I thought that's what I was going to do. And I studied that stuff. I was ready for boot camp, all of that, but they had changed the rules around asthma. And so I wasn't able to enlist. But all I had done from the time I was about 14 years old till 18 is studied finance because I was like, I'm going to live on base. I'm going to save a ton of money. So I knew a little bit about personal investing and already owned some mutual funds by the age of 18, but didn't know financial planning, etc. And so I went into the interview, and some point in the interview, this guy said, you know what? There's a guy 21 years old out in LA. He's making $250,000 a year. And my entire assessment about whether I should do this or not was I didn't know any 21-year-olds smarter than me. Now, I probably did, but I didn't think they were smarter than me. So if this 21-year-old can do it, I can do it, and I got in the industry. Now, I didn't make $250 by the time I was 21, but I did it by the time I was 22. And that's kind of how my whole career kicked off, where it was so early, and it's kind of unique now to be 41 years old and now having been in this business like 22 years.
Right. It's a huge deal. And of course, you've come a long way since then. You've been featured in quite a few major magazines. Tell us about your features. What was it? Entrepreneur, Forbes, Inc.
Yeah.
I mean, those are huge.
Well, I was interviewed by, I wouldn't go as far as being featured.
Gotcha.
Yet. But I was featured by, speaking of Puget Sound, by 425 Business Journal. And with each one of those, where they all kind of stemmed from was one. That's why I'd never underestimate a single opportunity to tell your story, because I had done a TED Talk type talk for just the entrepreneurs organization in Seattle here. And that stemmed into an article in their Octane magazine. And then from that is how the articles got picked up by Forbes, Inc., Entrepreneur, Small Business Trends, and then ultimately 425 magazine. All that came out of this idea that for business owners, you can never have financial independence on that business balance sheet. No matter how big or how successful the business is, if you can't transfer that value to your personal balance sheet, it's not either or between the two. It's just that you have to build both. And most business owners get tranquilized by the perceived value of their business, and they don't do enough to build their personal balance sheet, and then get shocked when they can't sell the business for enough to live off that money for the rest of their life. But it's too late by the time they find that out. And it was that concept that really caught on in those publications.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this week's episode. We hope you really enjoyed it. If you love the people and stories of the Puget Sound, please support this podcast by reviewing us and rating us on Apple Podcasts. Stay tuned next week as we continue to curate the underground.